how do you think, or what do you see in terms of verticals, technologies which have been driving the current market? Cloud, of course, is one around which everything is revolving.
So look, I think there's been a real change in the way we approach building applications over the last 5 years. It started 10 years ago, really, with cloud becoming common. And the last 5 years, it's really become amplified because it's not just about the adoption of cloud services. It's a whole mentality that goes with that. Being an agile development environment. The organizations are asking more of their technology teams. And today, every business is a technology business. And that's the reality of where we are now. And it's only going to become more and more dependent on technology. When I say it, I mean business is only going to become more and more dependent on technology. And the adoption of cloud has done a lot to accelerate the transformation of businesses, because not only did it give us this, elastic compute, but it gave us a new way of thinking about solving problems. Oh, I need to solve this. I can just use an API from here. Oh, my cloud vendor doesn't have that API, but this other person has built this. I'll just use that API. It's introduced a whole new way of thinking about the way we build applications, the way that we do things. And if you combine that with the ubiquity of high-speed broadband, it has completely transformed what we expect from our organizations and what our users expect from organizations, right? I mean, your users now just expect things to work, right? They don't want delays in getting access to data. They want, very wonderful and beautiful visual dashboards. They want to be able to explore data. They want to be able to mix data sources, to do all of these interesting things. So I think broadband, the wide scale availability of broadband, combined with not just the scalability of cloud, but the mindset of building cloud applications, has completely transformed the way that we design and build services. What that's had is that it's had a flow-on effect to the way we're designing networks. And the old architectural styles no longer are as relevant or as strong from both an outcomes perspective, from just a fundamental networking perspective, but also significantly from a security perspective. Because one of the things that I really think that's changing is that as we move more and more business to be digitally transformed, it changes the way our risk profiles. So we're no longer looking at organizational risk silos. We're looking at a digital risk that cuts across those silos. And when you think that digital risk, from that digital risk perspective, it changes not just what you want to do, but it changes the way you approach it. Because what it means is security has to be fundamental to each piece of those organizational risk silos. Because if it is fundamental, you can build controls against that digital risk. You can mitigate that digital risk. So security, I think, is also changing from being a back of house function to being a front of house function. End users, consumers, whether they are businesses or people in their homes, care about security now. So an analyst inside an organization who is building a new, say, banking product for a financial institution, or designing that product, for them, security has to be fundamental. It has to be a foundational piece that cuts across all of those digital silos that they would normally have to worry about. So I think there's been a lot of change from not just an architecture perspective, but from a mindset perspective, and now a digital risk perspective. So all of these things are really changing every industry. And it doesn't matter whether it's government services, doesn't matter whether it's banking and finance, or whether it's whether it's healthcare, or resources, every single one of those is going through some sort of digital transformation that is touching every aspect of their business. I was just recently talking to a construction company, and a couple of years ago when I met with the CIO, this is the same company. I met with them 3 years ago, and I met with them just recently. 3 years ago when I met with this construction company, the CIO said to me, I have trouble getting funding from the board for security because we dig holes. He said, we dig holes on one side and we fill them on the other. And occasionally we put a building on top, right? As a construction company. So why does my company care about security? They only want me to do the bare minimum. 3 years down the track, security is now fundamental for that organization because they are now doing captive contracts. There's pricing, tender information that they have to deal with. That's all corporate IT function, but also they're transforming the way they build things. They have tunnel boring machines that dig holes under the surface of cities. They're mobile data centers. There's connectivity, calling back to its manufacturer, sending telemetry to a regulator, all of this sort of stuff. All of a sudden, digital security is now affecting the digging of the hole, right, on the other side. So they've gone from being security being a back of house function to being something that is absolutely critical for their ongoing operation. And that's a very big fundamental change. And I use that as a barometer for industry in general, because that's an industry that you would not typically associate with cybersecurity.
So Nick, nicely you elaborated on this. If I can, summarize the statement in a single word or single line, it is the combination, it is the merge of IT and OT. When you are talking about those digging machines, those are operational technologies, and the technologies that going through IoT, it is going to cloud and getting digital.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's really the convergence of these digital technologies is making us change the way we approach securing all of them, because the entire architecture has to change to adapt to it.
Okay. So are you seeing the architecture getting changed by the CIOs or the CISOs? Are these companies, of course, going into digital transformation path, but are they spending enough dollar towards doing that in this pandemic?
Well, yeah, I think actually, I think we've seen an increase in technology spending during the pandemic, and I'll say this: the length of agreements might not be as long, but projects are moving up because people are being cautious. Organizations are being cautious. They might not want to commit to something for 3 years. They might bring that down for 12 months or a year, but they're bringing their projects forward because digitization has been the savior of many industries through this pandemic. And on a micro level, so if I talk about a micro business or a small business, just here in my hometown, there is a pub which serves meals. Now, they had no online presence beforehand. You had to go in, sit down, order your food, order a beer, sit down, have a meal, out the door you went. No digital business. The pandemic came, they were shut down. They've been shut down since March. No one's been able to sit down and have a meal in there. So all of a sudden, they've gone online. They've taken their small business and digitized that. So I can sit at home, order a meal, provide the registration number of my car, turn up, and they see my registration number of my car, and they bring my meal out to me to come home. And I use that as an example of a small business spending money on technology for their survival. And on the other side, you've got big businesses who've gone, well, we have to change our online presence is the only way we've got money coming through the door. It might have been only 10% of sales at the start of the pandemic, Now it's 100% of sales because your shop's closed. You can only do things like delivery and click and collect. So we're seeing a lot of transformation happening inside organizations, pivoting to digital, and then adding security to ensure that it works. Because what happens if your end customer doesn't have faith in you from a security perspective, they won't buy from you. Because when you're buying online, it doesn't really matter whether or not your supplier is down the road or in another city, right? So security has to be fundamental because it's very hard to restore a reputation after you mistreat people's data. And those are scenarios in the retail sector. But we've seen a whole pivot, you know, how does a bank deal with opening accounts when you can't have your branches open? How does a financial institution continue to sell products to its users? How does small business engage with its lender when they can't meet with them? Big pivots in digitization, and I think it's actually accelerated a lot of projects. With that's come a lot of challenges, because when I say this to a lot of CIOs, the business always wins. And CIOs know this. CISOs might have been a little bit more recalcitrant, I'll say, because security people often think that security is the business that the company is in. Like, I've got to keep everybody safe. I've got to keep the company safe. I've got to keep all the data safe. I've got to do that. But when there's an existential threat to the viability of the business risk appetite changes significantly. So what security used to say was not possible, we can't possibly allow that, we can't possibly do that, all of a sudden had to become possible. Otherwise, the business would shut its doors. So I think a lot of security people went through a bit of a shock to be told, well, we're just not going to do that. You know, it doesn't matter, we don't have visibility into that network segment. All our people are working from home. It doesn't matter that they don't have company issued laptops. They need access to company data to do their jobs. Otherwise, the business shuts down. So I constantly say this, and I've been quoted quite a few times saying now, the business always wins, because no matter what happens, the business has to survive. So that pivoting has meant big changes. Now, there's two types of security people I've found in the last 6 months during this time. The first ones are the ones who are very reluctant about these changes. And the other ones are the ones who've embraced them and said, this is an opportunity now to hit the reset button. So I can jettison all the bad practices that I had in my legacy environment and transform and be modern in my security practices. And I've seen quite a bit of that. You know, I spoke to a CISO from a government department recently. And he said to me that he thinks he will get 5 years of policy work, cybersecurity policy work, done in 1 year as a result of the pandemic. Stuff that he would take 5 years, a 5-year roadmap, he thinks he can get done in a year, because the attitude of the executive and the people is so open to change now as a result of the pandemic. It's really making some of these things possible.
Absolutely. Nick, you rightly said the policies are getting changed, are forced to change to ease the business opportunity, business operations also. That brings also lot many attacks. We are seeing for last 5 months how many ransomware attacks have been surfaced, and big companies have been attacked.
Absolutely.
Every day I'm getting worms, you know, mails with worms, and I can make out it. So, so I can easily delete it. So what the industry, you know, stakeholders like your company, you know, Forcepoint is doing, you have got end-to-end solution from, you know, endpoint to you know, periphery security to web security. So many things are there, and you have been evolving the products.
Indeed.
innovating, creating innovation around those products, bringing in new products also. So what you guys are doing, what are the new products that you are bringing in so that the impact becomes minimal,
Yeah,
if not
absolutely.
completely checked?
So what I'll say is this, when I joined Forcepoint, one of the reasons I joined the company was because I thought that the vision of the organization was very clear and
Okay.
it sat well with that modern outlook, the way that a modern network would be built. And I thought to myself, if I was building a company, if I was the CIO or the CISO of an organization, and I was looking for a 3-year journey, a Horizon 1, Horizon 2 type activity and thinking, Forcepoint would be a vendor that I'd want to talk to. And it was one of the reasons I joined the organization. So we were well into this journey before the pandemic. We had decided last year that we have these great products. We've got amazing data loss prevention technology, amazing user activity monitoring technology, fantastic, and probably the world leader in insider threat capabilities, along with our web offerings, our web protection, our CASB. Now,
Yeah.
we said these are great products on their own, but the modern architecture doesn't really suit to try and take these things and stitch them together. So we're going to go on a journey where we have these as cloud delivered offerings that operate on the edge of the network. Now that
Okay.
edge could be in the cloud, it could be in someone's data center, could be at somebody's home. So we were already pivoting down that way.
Mhm.
And then the pandemic happened and it proved our business model, right? The pandemic proved our business model because, like I was saying, that transition that would take 5 years is being compressed down. So our offerings now are more relevant to the market than ever. So this architecture that we settled on takes from the Gartner's SASE model, the Secure Access Service Edge, as well as from Forrester's Zero Trust model. We combine these concepts to build out our new offerings. So we can deliver a 100% SASE product today that extends an enterprise's security controls into the cloud, which means that a user, whether they are in a building, in an office, on a managed machine, or whether they are at home on an unmanaged, uncontrolled personal computer, the same level of protection is afforded to that user and to that company's data, because we sit in between the user and the data. And so we've launched the first part of our SASE offering, which we call our Cloud Security Gateway, that really brings together those advanced functions that we have around data loss prevention, CASB, web protection, and puts them in the cloud in a single unified offering. Now we're launching a second part of that, that we call private access, that takes our award-winning next generation firewall, which would run inside somebody's home, inside someone's data center, and putting that into the cloud. So now that your user, you've got firewall as a service, your home user is not just being protected by their router connected to their ISP. Their traffic is now protected by a full next generation firewall stack in the cloud. And we've got private access, zero trust networking access going back into the organization. So that's really the first part. I mean, that's a complete SASE zero trust vision around that. The second thing that we're doing is, well, we've got this fantastic insider threat user activity monitoring capability today with two products, Forcepoint Insider Threat, Forcepoint Behavioral Analytics. But these have been the domain of only the largest enterprises in the world, because they require a complex program of works to understand, to operationalize. So it's only regulated industries, typically financials, government, defense, etc., that utilize those technologies. But the same problems exist everywhere. So what we are doing is we're just about to launch what we call our dynamic user protection offering that takes those capabilities and democratizes them, puts them in the cloud, and allows any organization to do that. And what I see our great differentiator is going into next year, into 2021, is taking that user activity and risk profiling and then driving not just data protection actions that we do today, but network protection actions that we can do in our SASE edge. So this is what I call SASE Plus. It's what our Chief Product Officer, Nico Pop, who's a good friend of mine, he calls it the SASE of the fourth kind. I think he came up with a better name, but I'm sticking with SASE Plus. Right? It's really pivoting not just to SASE, but what I'm calling behavior-based networking, behavior-based data access, so that only the right people have the right access at the right times to the right data, and only when they're behaving appropriately. And that is our vision. And that's what we're delivering on. We have all the pieces today that you can do this inside your own environment, and we're taking them to the cloud so that it fits in with that modern architecture, so that an organization no longer has to make compromises to say, well, you're in this building, so you're fully protected. You're in that building, you're in a branch office, you're not as well protected, or you're at home, so you're only getting the minimal protection. Our vision is that no matter where you are, with what device, you have the same level of protection and the same level of controls, and the organization has the same level of visibility. And that truly is a defining statement for us. And it's really where customers' architectures will go. No matter what today's cybersecurity practitioners say in an organization, oh, my company's not a big user of cloud. Oh, we have managed machines everywhere. No matter what they say today, Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3, as they set out their roadmaps, they'll end up using this sort of architecture. And we will be there for them in order to provide that protection. So I'm very bullish about the future of Forcepoint.
All right, Nick, I think a lot many AI automation might be going into it because after all,
Absolutely.
it's the human who makes error. So can you touch upon that, the automation and artificial intelligence goes into the SASE? Because I'm finding many companies, not only you, so many companies are bringing out their version of their solutions as far as SASE is concerned.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right. You bring up a really good point there. And that's what I mean by we're really doing SASE Plus. Because if you just think about SASE, it's just the networking model. It's it's putting stuff at the edge of the cloud. What is different about it? Well, what is different about it here is that we are instrumenting it to understand behavior. Now, when you instrument it to understand behavior, you start to collect all these signals. Now, these might be human behavioral signals, they might be device behavioral signals, or threat signals. But either way, it's instrumented and we're collecting them. Now, the collection piece is easy. And you'll ask anyone who's run a SIEM, getting your logs into your SIEM is probably the easy part. Turning logs into action is the hard part, right? So how do you connect going from, events to insight to action? Because ultimately collecting data and instrumenting something doesn't make a difference, doesn't matter if you can't convert that to action. So the action piece is where we are focused on. Right now, a lot of security operations centers run for customers depend on a lot of manual processes. You have systems generating alerts. They then have to be investigated and triaged by an analyst who then decides what's going to happen. Our model is different. We're using a lot of AI, a lot of machine learning to scale this so that we have dynamic responses. And I'll give you a worked example that proves the vision. So if you have a user who is at home and they're utilizing a whole bunch of corporate services, they're going through the SASE service edge, all of the SASE protections are there. Web gateway to protect them against web-borne threats, remote browser isolation for advanced threats, sandboxing for very advanced threats, next-gen firewall for those advanced networking threats. But I still don't know, and I still can't investigate what that person is doing. That's the SASE. Once I start to add data protection, okay, I have a policy that says I'm going to restrict this person from sending this email or using this content, sharing this content in this way. Yeah, that's great. That's what CASB and DLP does today. But if I just have rules, I always end up investigating things after they've happened. So our model is to move before the incident. So take those signals and have an action that occurs before the malicious or before the event occurs, whether it's malicious or unintentional. So I'll give you an example. Imagine a user at home using their computer, going through a SASE cloud. Now, if it's just SASE, you're not going to stop that person from inadvertently sharing data. If it's SASE Plus, if it's Forcepoint's vision of SASE, where we've put in our human analytics underneath, our machine learning and AI, that is observing what the user is doing, and it gains insights and says, wait a minute, this user is posing a higher risk than normal, and automatically restricts them from doing certain actions. You've now gone from waiting for something to happen to predicting something has happened and preventing it, right? So you've gone from detecting it at the moment to moving it. You've moved left. You've gone to become predictive security. But furthermore, as that user's risk goes up, it introduces the ability to do coaching. So a lot of people, and you rightly mentioned, the user makes mistakes. They make mistakes when they're busy, when they're rushed, when they don't know what to do, when they aren't aware of the threats. So imagine a scenario where I have predicted that this user is presenting a risk to the organization. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to, when they go to perform this action, I'm going to pop up a message and says, this is a violation of policy. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Right? We have this virtuous cycle then of not just predicting a bad event, but also identifying and prioritizing coaching and training for users who are most at risk of causing a bad event. Now that's the true power there, right? Because we are now moving back in time. We are saying we can predict a bad event from occurring. Since we can predict it, we can dynamically change controls to prevent it from happening. And we can go back and inform the user to tell them what they're doing wrong. That is very powerful. That is extremely powerful. And what I tell CISOs is the difference between our vision and every other SASE vision is that we are adding that human piece to it, that human intelligence, and it has to be driven by machine learning and artificial intelligence. Otherwise, it doesn't scale. Because you get all these signals, you can't make sense of it. You have to have data scientists. You have to have people who understand human psychology. You have to have people who understand workflows. These are not resources and skills that come easy, that come cheap, or are readily available. So we do that on behalf of our customers. And that's the true power here, that we are curating this. We're democratizing it. We're bringing it down. So it's not just going to be in the air of the most well-resourced organizations. And what I tell CISOs is that you want to be able to go to your board and say, these are the things that we stopped from happening, as opposed to this is the reason this got out. because that's the reality. That's the difference. You want to be able to say what you've stopped, not why this one thing got out, even though you've made all these investments in technology, because you're always working post fact, something will eventually get out. So that to me is the big differentiator for us, and why not only is the signaling and the architecture important, but the human curation of machine learning and artificial intelligence to drive those dynamic responses with expert influence. That's the real secret sauce.
Okay, if I if I look at the tagline of your company, it says that human-centric
Indeed.
cybersecurity, or a human-centric approach, which now people are working from homes, and it becomes more human-centric than the earlier times.
Absolutely.
Is it? Is it? But have you changed it? Have you changed your approach? Have you changed? Have you tweaked the solutions in order to adapt to the new normal, or it was there from the beginning? If you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah. Great question. So as I said, one of the reasons I joined the company is because I thought that the vision was right. We were on the right track. And when I was doing my due diligence, I looked at the tagline and thought, human-centric cybersecurity. Is this more than just marketing? And Manish is sitting there going, oh my God, what's he going to say now? uh, is this more than just marketing? And I was very pleased to discover that it was. What's happened as a result of the work from home is we reprioritized the releases of our offerings to make sure that we were solving those problems faster. We were already on that track. It just came about reprioritization to make sure we could solve those things for customers. All of a sudden we had customers who were using our technology, and they were using it for a small section of their users. We want to help people out. So we told our customers, we know that you don't have licensing for all of your users. Let's give them all access. Let's keep you going, and then we'll come back and let's worry about the number of users. Let's get through this together as true partners. So I think that's one of the big things that happened. Not so much tweaking of the technology, but our priorities and of the way that we went to solve those issues for customers. It moved our schedules up. So the launch of our Cloud Security Gateway unified SASE offering, we moved that up as a result of this. We were already on that track. And, we just asked our engineering teams to put in extra hours to get it out faster than we had anticipated, so that we could solve these problems for our customers. So there's a lot more to just the tagline, right? The human-centric pieces are really there. And that curation of machine learning and AI by our data scientists in our X labs absolutely has been there to drive that. And we did tweak things, obviously, as the threat landscape changes. As we saw more threats coming to people's homes, our X Labs team make changes to the algorithms, to the models, to accommodate for these new threats. And that has happened. But that's the benefit of using a service like ours, because we do that for you. We do that on behalf of the customer, so they don't have to anticipate all of those changes. And that's actually been really good for the last 6 months. I've seen a lot of people benefit from our experience in handling this.
All right, Nikki, a couple of more questions.
Sure.
One is that you are talking vociferously about the benefits of SASE, and from a vertical market point of view, since the market is changing, businesses are also changing. The way the business used to happen, the way the normal business, they are. I'm predicting, or everybody is predicting that some of the businesses will be out of the this earth. They cannot do the business the way they used to do, because the entire norm is changed now. So
yes.
where do you see this SASE getting adopted, or which are the verticals do you think can
Ah,
start with as
yeah.
a sweet spot as far as a base security solutions are concerned,
So
or is there any trade-off?
the industries and verticals that are most that are moving to SASE is faster than others is
Okay.
probably retail and financial services. Uh, and the reason I say that is because they have lots of branches, branch offices, lots of stores, um, those things. So basically, any industry that operates in many different locations, right? That to me is where it's happening. I mean, it's even happening in in manufacturing, where you have these really diverse manufacturers who have integrated supply chains, those sorts of things, where essentially their suppliers are part of their network. You know, so I don't think it's industry specific. It's more the way the business operates, because I'm seeing it in healthcare, because you have healthcare networks that operate chains of doctors' surgeries and pathology labs. They're all going down that path too. You've got banks doing it because they've got lots of branches. You've got retailers doing it because they have lots of stores. And governments as well, because they're sending their people to work in regional centers and they're sending their people to work from home. So I don't think it's specific to an industry. It's more about the way the industries work. So if you are in an industry that has many locations, SASE is the model to go to. I think the ones that are driving the fastest are probably retail and financial services.
I think today's date, all the, I think 80% or 90% of the organizations are there allowing their employees to work from home. That means it is
Absolutely.
applicable. So I say, as a technology is applicable to all these, all the organizations, that maybe 80% that I'm talking about, or you
Indeed.
can talk about.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like it's this. What's happened is at the start of the year, it was certain industries that were adopting this model.
Hmm.
By April, everyone was trying to adopt this model. Right? That's what I mean. Like it's just such an acceleration, and it's very good. Right? It's very good the uh, for those organizations to be able
Hmm.
to transform. Um, I talked to a lot of CISOs, and their projects completely got turned up on their heads.
Okay.
But they've reprioritized to bring forward these types of solutions because as a result of the pandemic, right? And it doesn't matter, I was dealing with just a small customer, 500 people,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't ever think those 500 people will go back into an office. They think they will all work from home, and then they'll have staggered shifts where one or two people, 10 people will come in on Mondays, others will come in on Tuesdays, etc. Those sorts of things. For an organization with that few people, the shift to SASE is very fast. For say a bank that has 100,000 employees, making that change obviously takes longer, but they are all on the same journey. And that's the beauty of SASE. And that's the beauty of the model that we're going with, because it doesn't matter whether or not you're a 500 seat organization or a 100,000 seat organization. The delivery model is the same, right? The delivery model is the same, and the level of protection is the same, because you can get it all in the cloud, and that's opened up so many doors, right? It's opened up so many doors, and I think there's a real sweet spot for industry size right now. So if you're in the most agile industries that I see are the ones that sort of they're about most agile organizations are the ones between 5 and 10,000 seats, because they have typically, once you get to that size, you have a well managed IT function, but you are still small enough to make rapid changes. When you're a 100,000 seat financial institution, there is a level of bureaucracy and compliance that comes with that, which makes some of the changes longer to implement. So they're all on that path, but how fast it happens varies significantly.
All right. So, Nick, last question I'll ask you. Look at the pandemic, and the budget has been a very big talking point
Indeed.
for every organization. The CIOs, CISOs, there is a huge contraction of budget, and every CFO is saying that okay, the whatever budget I had allocated in the last quarter for this quarter, you have to squeeze that. You have
Yeah.
to manage with that for two quarters. I mean, just very my estimation or my presumption after talking to some of the global CIOs and CISOs,
Yes.
right? And it is applicable to most of the people. Now,
Agreed.
in this situation, when of course it demands a investment to go for new technology. So, how are you helping them,
Yeah.
or where do you pitch in that entire scheme of thing, keeping budget in mind?
Yeah, great question. Great question, Sanjay. And I think this is a very important one because, as I said before, the pandemic has placed an existential threat to business, and businesses have had to, they're dealing with much lower revenues coming through the door, whether you are an oil company and you're not selling petrol anymore because no one's driving anywhere, right? Or whether you
Absolutely.
are a retailer and you don't have people walking through the door, how do you deal with that? And that budget problem. So from our end, there's two approaches. Firstly, with our model, we have put together very, very compelling pricing that is unified. So we're actually, because we're delivering outcomes to the customer, we can say to a customer, you currently today have 5 or 6 different technologies from different vendors that you are integrating and you're getting a level of efficacy out of, which is not ideal. Not only can we improve your level of efficacy to get you better cybersecurity outcomes, but we'll get you a better business outcome by consolidating with Forcepoint. So you consolidate multiple vendors, multiple costs, multiple contracts into a single offering or buying program that we have. We launched what we call our Forcepoint Advantage buying program earlier this year that really allowed organizations to drive exceptional value out of their purchasing. So there's just that's the upfront cost piece. The second piece is the opportunity cost. So when you're calculating your opportunity cost of, if I don't do this, what am I not going to get? So it's really been a pivot of investments. So organizations are saying, well, you know what, I'm going to put on hold doing the refit of this building if I can get my users working from home and trading to keep money flowing through the front door, because I know that building's not going to be open. So we've seen that change as well within organizations. So a lot of what I do is work with CIOs and CISOs to understand their budget pressures and work with them, not just to have Forcepoint put together an offering for them to save them money, but also how they can work with their own board and their own leaders to make cybersecurity a piece of their transformational projects. So they're not being funded separately. So when the organization says we have to pivot to being digital online, cybersecurity is funded as part of that, not as a afterthought where it's funded separately. It's part of that transformation project. So I do a lot of that working with organizations to work with their boards and their executives to build out how we can model those costs. If they don't do this, then they can't do that. And if they can't do that, they can't sell this, they can't do that, run their business. So modeling opportunity cost is a big one. So the first part is operational cost on using our Forcepoint Advantage and delivering this as a cloud service. And then secondly, examining the opportunity cost and working with CISOs to do that. And I'd say that's been fairly successful so far.
Okay, Nick, I think I remember one more thing that I should definitely
Sure.
ask you about, because If you look at the ecosystem, if you look at the competition, you have got so many competition, and there are bigger companies
Indeed.
who have got bigger footprint in the market, and they are trying
Yeah.
to do better business this time also, because they are looking at their size, looking at the manpower strength. They have to be sustainable and thriving also, right? So what is, what are your competitive advantage looking at Cisco's,
Yeah.
for example, Cisco
Yeah.
security, IBM security? It's not that only Forcepoint is offering this solution.
Indeed,
These,
it's a very crowded space, right?
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
the last few years in my previous role as CTO for what was then a much bigger company as well for the region, I'd go to RSA conference in San Francisco every year,
Yeah, yeah.
and I remember back then we used to have an endpoint security product, and people would say to me, "Oh, endpoint security is dead," and I'd walk around the floor and I'd see 700 exhibitors selling
Hmm.
endpoint solutions, right? And now everyone that you know of is trying to sell a SASE story. Everyone is trying to sell their vision of the future. Everyone is trying to sell these things. And it's a good thing. First of all, the success of the cybersecurity industry overall is good for everyone. As they say, the old analogy, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And we are
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those ships, right? And it's better for businesses, it's better for the consumers, and it's better for citizens that people take cybersecurity more seriously. But why would someone pick a technology like Forcepoint over every other crowded voice in the space? And I'll say this, and that is, we are a company that is solely focused on this mission. We are a security pure play company that focuses on user and data protection. That's all we do. We're not selling productivity tools. We're not selling infrastructure. We're not selling all these other things that are distractions, which means we can do this very, very well. Not only can we do this very well, we can invest heavily in this space to maintain our competitive edge. Now, we know we are under significant competitive pressure. And what's great about a company like Forcepoint is because we have focus, we can focus on improving and staying ahead and being the vendor of choice for these organizations. We have the size, we're nearly 3,000 people. I'm interviewing candidates in the morning for new roles.
Okay.
We have the size, we have the investment, we have the technology, and we have a uniqueness in our offering in that we're taking the best of what we already have in all of these areas and delivering the vision. We are not, a lot of the other vendors, they have expertise in one space. So let's say, for example, it might be web gateways. Great. You might have a great web gateway. We've got a great web gateway, but going from being doing a web gateway to doing insider threat and understanding human behavior, it's a very big gap. It's a very big gap. And we do all of those pieces really, really well, that combined. So what I like about Forcepoint is we have expertise in all of these areas on the vision. We are not stretching ourselves from one position to go to another. We are consolidating our existing excellent offerings into this cloud model. So that's why I think we will succeed. When I do a lot of analyst presentations and I talk about our ability to win and our ability to execute, and that's, I think, one of the big things that we've got going for us. We have domain expertise in behavioral analytics. We have domain expertise in data protection. We have domain expertise in firewall. We have domain expertise in user activity monitoring. We have domain expertise in web gateway. We have domain expertise in CASB. We are consolidating all of these into that offering, which is why I think we will win. That's not to say our competitors aren't going to put pressure on us to continue to innovate. And I welcome that pressure because it means that our offerings will always be relevant to the market. And because we are focused on this, we can work very, very quickly. And I give you the example, when we decided that we were going to launch private access, that went from prototype to commit within 3 months. That's a scale, that is the speed that a startup operates at, but we're not a startup. We're a large enterprise security business that operates in countries all over the world, that has support all over the world, that has experience in doing this. And we are moving at that sort of pace. And I think that's super impressive. So that's why I think customers should invest their efforts and their time and their money and trust us with their journey, because we will be their partners for now and the future. And security is our business. It's not a add-on business that is 5% of revenue. It is our only focus.
100% of your revenue. All right then. Thank you very much, Nick. Absolute pleasure talking to you. I mean, unlike the way we would have met physically and spoken to each other, I won't have asked so many questions that I asked today because of the natural distractions. Now, since we are at home, we don't have any. I personally, as a journalist, I don't have any distraction. I wanted to ask you the right questions. I did.
Sure.
I hope you also enjoy it.
I love it. Maybe one day we'll get to meet in person when we're allowed to travel again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right then. Thank you, Nick.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks, Nick. Sanjay, I'll send you the recording over once it is available to me.
Absolutely. And send across a photograph of Nick as well. Nick, by the way, what is the background photograph? Because I can see a cricket stadium.
It is. That's Melbourne. That's the MCG there.